Like, of all the people to pick, he's such a scumbag, such an asshole, such a bully. To rally around them, I think if Mamdani loses, like, it would be valuable for folks who are in the DSA to look inward and evaluate policies that maybe didn't work for them electorally, or to just, like,
for sure,
right? But they will absolutely have every right to be furious at the Democratic Party for backing someone who is actively shitty, not an alternative, just like a bad guy.
I think they will say Democratic Party. It is worth saying that, like, you've had, Lander and Mamdani crossing doors. You have you've had Adrian Adams and
establishment.
Yes, yeah, and it's disgusting. It's disgusting. I do think that, like, this was something that came up when I talked to Mamdani. Is I said, like, what he said at the beginning of his campaign is, because Cuomo jumps in, rockets to the top. Mamdani's like, the more people get to know the myth of Andrew Cuomo, the better I'll do. And I think that's, like, been totally true. He's been proven absolutely correct about that. And there's, like, a lot of misinformation, a lot of propaganda, a lot of, like, hateful stuff that has nothing to do with the job, that is going to cost Mamdani in one way or another and could cost him the race. But I also think sometimes, like, okay, there's a myth that people are enamored of with Cuomo, right? Something about toughness and competence and like what it means to that what you want in a leader, right? And it's absolutely true that a lot of that's a myth, and a lot of his toughness is bullying and shit that'll make him a worse mayor and unable to do the job. But at the same time, I think sometimes we don't do enough to say, hey, what is it that people want in that myth? And how can we be sure that we're convincing people who want that version of leadership that we have that toughness, even as we have more compassionate and generous and, like, empathetic policies? And I sometimes think we don't do that. I think sometimes on the left, there's a little bit of the left can't fail, can only be failed. And that's not to say if Cuomo wins, that's not a despicable like outcome of a lot of, like, unfairness in this process. But I do think I want that too, because, like, I don't want Andrew Cuomo to be the next mayor of New York. I think it's fucking awful.
There's a fundamental question electorally for candidates like Mamdani is, can they do well enough with black voters to win? The core of the Democratic primary, the most important electorate in every Democratic primary, around the presidential primary, and particularly in New York. And can he do well enough to win?
And increasingly Hispanic working class voters as well. I mean, just working class voters in general. And it has become this irony, right, that more progressive candidates, DSA candidates, their policies are fighting for the working class, but in this country, the working class Americans, first white, then now black and Hispanic, are, voting more conservatively. So yes, I totally agree.
It's within the context of a Democratic primary,
yes,
obviously, and Bernie had shown some success with Latino voters. We didn't get a full test of it, but it shows some success with it. AOC obviously has. We'll see how this plays out. It's going to probably matter a little bit borough by borough for Mamdani. But the thing that is prevented, if Bernie could have done just a little bit better with black voters in 2016, a lot better with them in 2024, he could have been the Democratic nominee. And that has been that just for progressive candidates. That's why Obama succeeded, was the first step progressive anti-establishment candidate to win a Democratic primary, because he could get the college-educated support that is very important in Iowa and New Hampshire, and also do very well with black voters.
Well, just for the purposes of a thought experiment here, I do think it's worth separating out the style of politics from the policy, right? Because we could have a whole debate about, like, what issue positions and policy positions can win a general election. Like, do I think a DSA candidate could win a national election or an election in a purple state? Maybe, but I don't think so, right? But if you have, like, I think that our party, you have to have people running for office in our party campaign like Mamdani's been campaigning, who run a campaign like that, who are, like, meeting people all over the place, who are speaking to people's concerns, who are, like you said, love it. Like, the strength I think people are looking for is fight on behalf of people who need a fighter, right? And to constantly be making it about the people that you want to represent. And I don't think we've seen that. Like, if there is a, non-DSA in some purple states or even nationally, like, center-left candidate who campaigns like Mamdani's been campaigning, that could person be president. And if there are schmucks like Andrew Cuomo out there who the party's going to continue to coalesce around because, on paper they might be, highest name recognition and have these, moderate credentials or whatever else, but they suck, then, we're going to keep losing.
I could scream about this for an hour. On my flight here, I pounded out a message box. It'll be in your inboxes tomorrow with this thing, because I'm so mad about it It's so stupid for people, anyone outside of New York, to panic about who the mayor of New York is politically. Like, we had a lot of problems because Eric Adams has been under indictment for a year. Was that a huge problem for House Democrats in 2024? No.
But also, like, there's something so. There are other candidates, right? Like, there's Brad Lander, Adrian Adams, Eleanor Myrie. They had platforms. They're between them, basically, progressive wise, right? Like, you had like a range of options, and somehow you ended up with this sort of like super polarized vote, right? And the fact that all this money decided to get behind Andrew Cuomo because they were so afraid of Mamdani, when they could have supported Adrian Adams, right? They could have done. There's a lot of things that could have been different about this. So there's a way in which it's sort of like a unique situation, a uniquely like frustrating situation for voters who maybe aren't as far left as Mamdani, don't want to have a sexual harasser or bully in their job.
Yeah, for sure. But one reason I think it concerns all of us, even though we're not like deep in the New York City mayor's race, and like you said, I don't think that this one mayor's race has an effect on the party writ large. A similar dynamic is what I worry about heading into 2028 again. And it's not necessarily going to be like Cuomo, right? But just these candidates that either look good on paper or the establishment feels comfortable with, or who have name recognition, or for some reason they think that's the safe choice. And I don't know that that's necessarily the best way to try to win an election. So we'll see. All right, that's our show for today. If you live in New York and need help figuring out where and when to cast your ballot, go to votesafeamerica.com/vote and a new show on Friday. If you want to listen to Pod Save America ad-free or get access to our subscriber Discord and exclusive podcasts, consider joining our Friends of the Pod community at crooked.com/friends, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts directly from the Pod Save America feed. Also, be sure to follow Pod Save America on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube for full episodes, bonus content, and more. And before you hit that next button, you can help boost this episode by leaving us a review and by sharing it with friends and family. Pod Save America is a Crooked Media production. Our producers are David Toledo, Saul Rubin, and Emma Illick-Frank. Our associate producer is Farrah Farr. Reed Cherlin is our executive editor, and Adrian Hill is our executive producer. The show is mixed and edited by Andrew Chapman. Jordan Cantor is our sound engineer, with audio support from Kyle Seglin and Charlotte Landis. Madeline Herringer is our head of news and programming. Matt DeGroat is our head of production. Naomi Sengel is our executive assistant. Thanks to our digital team, Elijah Cohn, Haley Jones, Ben Hefco, Molly Lavelle, Kirill Palaviv, Kenny Moffett, and David Tools. Our production staff is proudly unionized with the writers.